Am I moving to Sony from Canon? Well, let's talk about it. And before you think this video is clickbait, it's not. These are actually some internal thoughts that I've had with myself. And you know, most of the time people say you come to a decision better when you're able to verbally process your thoughts. So that's what I'm going to do on this video today, just verbally process the thoughts that I've had about moving to Sony from Canon. Now let's go back to where I started initially. So when I first started photography, I picked up the Canon R50. That was initially to record YouTube videos, and then I decided to take some pictures, and then that's all she wrote. So now we're here. And then from the Canon R50, I upgraded to the Canon R7 because it was dual slot and I wanted to get into shooting weddings. Even though it's crop sensor, I still got some amazing images out of that camera. And then we are here currently. I am now on the Canon R6 Mark II. Full frame is about $2,000, and it's probably the best hybrid camera on Canon market under that $2,500 range. Now, when I first started photography, I was in between Canon and Sony, and really the only reason I was deciding on Sony was because I was really big into street photography, and I was watching two street photographers. One goes by the name of Pierre T. Lambert, and the other one is Professor Hines. You probably heard of one, or if not both of them. And I met Professor Hines at Imagen USA this past year, which was a really cool experience. So if I was in between Canon and Sony when I first started, why did I end up ultimately choosing Canon? Well, I don't know. If we're being honest, I don't know. I just chose what I felt worked best for me at the time, and I chose the Canon R50 because you know, I felt like it was really good for the video aspect as far as talking head like I'm doing right now. And then it took good pictures, or I got good pictures out of the camera, even on a kit lens. So I was like, you know what, this camera's gonna work. But now that I'm actually more knowledgeable about cameras and the ecosystem of cameras, I started thinking, should I sell all my Canon stuff and invest into the Sony ecosystem? Now, why did I have those thoughts, or why did I start having the thoughts about selling my Canon equipment and going into the Sony ecosystem? Well, to put it plainly, it really came down to the lenses. So if you've been following Canon and Sony for all of 5 minutes, you know that Sony allows a lot of third-party manufacturers to make autofocus lenses for their full frame cameras. Now, Canon does not allow any third-party manufacturers to make autofocus lenses for their full-frame cameras. You can find some manuals for their RF system, but as far as autofocus for their RF mounts, they're nowhere to be found. Now, if you go back to the EF system, you will see some third-party lenses there, like Tamron and Sigma, but as far as full-frame for the RF mount, nowhere to be found. Now, I know what some people are going to say, like, why don't you just buy third-party EF lenses and adapt them to your RF camera? Now, that is a great idea in theory, but at the same time, those lenses are older. Technology has gotten a lot better. Glass has gotten a lot better. So I don't really want to buy like 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old lenses and glass to go with a new camera when I can buy updated third-party lenses from another manufacturer. But it's not only the wide array of choices of lenses for third-party that you can get on a Sony E-mount, but it's also the price when you compare it to the Canon RF. So here's a few lenses that I've looked at for the Sony E-mount that when I compare them to the Canon RF mount, I'm like, what in the world? Like, why is there such a price difference? So Sirui just released their 85mm 1.4 full frame autofocus lens for the Sony E-mount, and it's priced at $599, but if you buy it before December 31st, you get it for $100 off, so $500. And then also you get a black mist filter and a UV filter to go with it. And then you have this Zeiss planar 50mm 1.4 lens for the Sony E-mount for $1,000. Now, if you compare it to the 50mm 1.4 VCM that Canon just announced, that is $1,400, so a $400 difference. And then here's another lens. This is a Tamron 28-75 f2.8 for Sony E-mount for $700, compared to the 24-70 2.8 from Canon, which is $2,100. Now, a lot of the native Sony glass is comparable in price to the native Canon glass for their full frame autofocus lineup, but just the ability to explore third-party options with great quality is something that I'm kind of flirting with. Now, I do mainly photography, but I do some videography here and there. Most of the videos I do actually come from this setup here, my talking head, but I have done engagement shoots. I'm doing a couple weddings next year for video, so I am branching into that videography space, but I mainly do photography. Now, Canon for photography is amazing if you ask me, especially straight out of the camera, the colors that it produces, it's hands down second to none. Now, I have seen, now this is just my personal experience. I'm not saying this is an objective fact, but from my personal experience, I've seen a lot of Sony pictures come out and they have like a green tint to it, while Canon kind of favors more towards the reds. So I don't know if that's just me or if that's an objective thing, but that's what I've noticed. Like if I'm going down Instagram and I'm scrolling and someone posts wedding pictures and they have like a green hue to them, typically in my mind, I'm like, okay, they shoot Sony. And then a lot of times I'll go to their Instagram page, I'll click on their about them or click on their picture of them posting about themselves and they're holding a Sony camera. Versus Canon, if I see pictures that are more true to color, if you will, or more leaning towards the magenta side or the red side of things, typically in my mind, I'm like, okay, they shoot Canon. And a lot of times I'm right. Now, is this an issue? No, not necessarily, because you can just adjust that in post. If it's too green, you just slide some magenta into it. If it's too magenta, you just slide some green into it. But I'm just thinking about some of the lenses I want and some of the cameras that I'm looking at, and as far as the Canon ecosystem goes. So Canon just released the new hybrid lenses, the 24 1.4, the 50 1.4, the 35 1.4, and they didn't release the 85 1.4, but they did release some 70 to 200s 2.8s, which I was really excited about. But I'm looking at the prices. I actually did a short-term review of the 35mm 1.4 VCM lens. I rented it out for the sake of a wedding and to do that video review if you want to check that out right up here. But I'm looking at the 24, I'm looking at the 50, and I'm just like, they're over $1,000, which I mean, fine. But when I look at these other party lenses and these third-party lenses that are putting out the same focal length for a significantly cheaper price and probably the same quality, I'm like, man, I don't know what to do. Like for instance, I shoot on an 85mm 2 f2 right now. It's a macro lens. It's great. It has 9 aperture blades, I believe, and I get stunning pictures with that lens. But when you look at the Sirui 85mm 1.4 that just released, that thing has 15 aperture blades. So you know that you're getting creamy background blur, creamy bokeh with that because of the amount of aperture blades, and it's $600 and another $100 if you buy it before December 31st. And it's just like, why can't Canon do something like this? Like, why can't Canon open up their autofocus RF mount line to third-party manufacturers? And I know a part of the reason is because of greed. Like they just want people to stick with their lenses and let that be that. But at the same time, more people probably would buy Canon cameras because of the images they produce straight out of the camera with the color science. If they could buy third-party lenses to go along with it, that's just what I think, honestly. And I know that's weird of me to say, considering Canon was the #1 mirrorless camera manufacturer in the year of 2024. Like a lot of people shoot Canon, a lot of people buy Canon. And I know a lot of photographers that I've shot with on wedding days have shot Canon, so it's easier to match the color science and easier to edit all together because they know they're getting the same color science. So I know that if I was to switch to Sony, I would be missing out on kind of working with those photographers that I've already worked with. But at the same time, I'm kind of more so in the line of thinking of not necessarily working with other people, but working for myself, like working for my workflow. So in comparison, the Canon R6 Mark II is $2,000. The Sony a7 IV is about $2,000. I think it's closer to $2,100. The 85mm f2 for Canon is about $600. The 85mm 1.4 by Sirui is $600. And I'm getting a lot better image quality and a better lens overall with the Sirui lens versus the Canon lens. Now the Canon lens is great. All the contemporary lenses are great. I'm not saying they're not, but at the same time, I can get a lot better glass for a cheaper price with third-party lenses on a Sony E-mount. Now I must mention the Canon RFL lenses, the luxury lenses, are of pristine quality. Like those are top tier lenses. But if you look at the price of them, they're all like over $2,000 for everything. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like the prices are absolutely asinine. Now, are they worth this price tag? I mean, maybe. That's a strong maybe. Like, are they high quality lenses? Yes. Do they produce good images? Do they have great autofocus? Do they have great motors? Are they objectively, optically better than a lot of the other lenses, especially in the contemporary lineup, and maybe even better than some third-party lenses? Maybe. You can make that argument. I'm not gonna say they're just objectively way better, but at the same time, like when you look at the price difference, it's like a lot of times I can't justify paying a 28 to 70 price for the f2. I can't really justify paying the price for the 24 to 70 2.8, but I can justify buying like a Tamron 28-75 or Sigma 24-70 or something like that. Like I can justify that. And it's just like, when you look at this stuff, I'm like, Canon, what are you doing? Like, what are we doing? Open up, if they were to open up the RF mount to third-party manufacturers for them to make lenses, autofocus lenses for the RF mount, I would be a happy camper. But when I'm talking about being financially responsible and just looking out for finances and just looking at the monetary value of the ROI, like the stuff I'm putting into gear and stuff I'm getting back out of it, as far as, you know, wedding, fortune, stuff like that, like would it make the most sense to switch from Canon to Sony? I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. Like, to wrap this up, am I going to switch to Sony? I don't know yet. I don't know yet. I'm still doing some thinking. I'm still doing some comparisons. Like, I'm kind of writing down, like, okay, if I was to sell all my Canon stuff, how much money would I get? And would that be enough to buy some quality glass for the Sony line? Because, you know, I can buy a $3,000 Canon or Sony body, but that doesn't leave any room for the lens. And of course, we all know the lenses are more important than the body. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I genuinely don't know, but it's just something I got to think about. And it's very enticing, the idea of switching to Sony E-mount, because of the variety of lenses that I can go with. And it's still going to be high quality lenses. So I don't know, but yeah, if you made it this far, leave a comment down in the comment section below about if you shoot Sony, why you shoot Sony, the benefits of shooting Sony. If you switched from Canon to Sony, why did you switch from Canon to Sony? Help me out here. Leave a comment down below. And if this video was of some value to you, or if you like this video, or if you just like hearing me talk and ramble for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, like and subscribe to the channel. That'd be much appreciated. There'll be a lot more videos like this where this came from. So until next time, y'all be good. Peace.